Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This finger show is about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Winchesters Season 1, Episode 8. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously, they met up with Samuel last episode, and now he's recuperating. And immediately, the moment he wakes up, he ends up being kind of a bit of a douche, because the moment he finds out, who are you and why are you, here with me right now talking to Millie? It's like, oh yeah, the doctor said, oh, Doctor Who. I'm like, you know, the writers know what they're doing. They're doing it on purpose, but I love it. But it's like, oh yeah, Ada. It's like, yeah, just without all the whole, being a jerk thing. He's like, yeah, that sounds like Ada. But then he found out, wait, your husband was a man of letters, meaning my daughter's teaching hunting family secrets to the son of a mole. Is like, mole, yeah, M-O-L, man of letters. I was like, interesting. Maybe it's been a while. I mean, no, it hasn't been. It's not, maybe it's been a while. It has been a while. I know the men of letters look down upon hunters. I didn't remember if the beef, went both ways. I think it did. I think it came up a little bit, but I don't think it was like that. It was definitely you definitely got more of the, men of letters look down on hunters. It's like, oh, you're barbaric, and your approach to, you're so, because hunting is such a traditional thing, whereas men of letters, there's tradition there too, but they've kind of, for them, it's almost like, we've kind of moved forward in our approach to this whole thing while you're kind of stuck in past hunters. So it's understandable why Sam would have beef with that, especially now knowing my daughter's getting close to some kid who's the son of a mole and everything. But it's like, yeah, but if it wasn't for that mole, you, your daughter, and my son would all be dead. So you should be a little thankful. It's like, yeah, Sam's a little bit of a curmudgeon. So they did get a case thrown their way. The moment the episode began and that musician got caught on fire and the person standing, I was like looking at the back of that head. I was like, wait, that's not. I was like, no, it must be, I'm reaching. And then it ends up being who I thought it was. I was like, because I think I referenced this without going into specifics. I was looking up Winchester casting. I just Googled it, and he came up, and I was like, wait, does that mean? I was like, well, it is to pass, so it's not like that character couldn't pop up at any point in time, considering who that character is. But I thought that was so fascinating. I was like, whoa, it's you. It's our favorite non-trickster, non-Loki Archangel Gabriel. It's like, oh, yeah, it's because also, too, this is back when you were a complete and utter douchebag. I mean, he was a tool for a long, long time, but I mean, that's also the sad thing, too, because it is a prequel, we do know where his story ends up. I mean, granted, there's a many years in between, so a lot could happen, but let's not also forget, this is back when he was a douchebag, too, so he was very trickster heavy, so it isn't that large of a stretch, for any time with him, he's always a fun. That character is so much fun. I was also wondering, where have I seen? It's I feel like I've seen him super fairly recently. It's oh yeah, because he was in last season of Kung Fu. He was in an episode, but he also popped up in a scene where Althea went to visit him in this season when his character was in prison. So it's that's why he was even more so. What's also interesting timing, because 3, maybe 4 episodes back of Leverage Redemption, Rob Benedict, I believe, popped up in an episode of Leverage Redemption. So it's just the timing's interesting on that front. It's also interesting too because who's also connected to Aldous Hodge from Leverage Redemption? Funny how that all plays out. Because I made a point connecting those dots in that regard as well. So either way, getting back to the episode, Mary and John ended up staying behind because it's probably after everything that went down, he's talking about, my people in the military, told that thing of people kind of doing crazy things when they died. And, it's oh yeah, you never know. Well, if you think you're about to die, you might do something crazy steal a car. But he's I want you to know that kiss wasn't like that, because I like you and I hope I hope it meant more to you as well, which it did, but with everything going on, the Akrita, her dad, she needs time to figure things out, so. And I think a lot of, her feelings just naturally for John, but I think put that in conjunction with her finally having a talk with her dad because he wants to join in a fight, but she's like, no, you're injured. Plus, I'm still pissed at you for walking away and not telling me that you were getting mixed up in all of this. Like, why did you go alone? And for him, it's like, I didn't want you to hate me like I ended up hating my own dad. My dad, I could have been anything, but my dad ruined my life. He changed my life the moment he put a knife in my hand, and he's like, I did the same thing to you. But the moment I heard whispers of there potentially being a way to wipe out all the monsters in the world, I wanted to try and give you that opportunity, that chance. But then while he was investigating that, that's when he stumbled across the Akrita. Also, he was giving, John all the flack throughout the episode, being like, hey, yeah, when you've been a hunter more than 5 minutes, it's like, come on, dude. The guy's doing his best. But he also notices, like, wow, a lot of the team has changed because Lata would never, like, be out and about with, like, getting out there in the fray. She would rather stay with her books. Then he looks at Carlos. Like, Carlos is just like a feral hunter, but, like, there's a more, like, complicated nuance to him. It's like, John's like, yeah, Mary's had that influence on them. It's like, right, she brought us together. She's the glue that kind of has influenced and made all of us stronger and better in that regard. And I think for Sam, it's just like, right, it's been a couple months, but so much has changed because even Mary's not the same as when he left. So it is that complicated thing of like how time is flying by you. But I think that also kind of like plays into it more of like, yeah, I didn't want that. I regret me putting this life in your hands, but it's like this life as a hunter, but it's like that doesn't have to define you forever. The fact of the matter is I can't make up for the years that you lost in this world of hunting, but I can at the very least like make it so that you don't have to spend the rest of your life doing it. And which is also sad too, because we've been down this road before, because if I remember correctly, that was the whole thing, that was the whole plot of like season 8 was like Sam undertaking those trials, and that would have wiped out all the monsters in the world, I believe, if I remember correctly. But the problem was that Dean and Sam could never ever fully let each other go, which I think that also kind of plays a little poetically into the series finale in that regard, because it's like, right, following willingly, kind of being okay and letting go and kind of moving on, because they always would never let each other go. So, but it's like, if I remember correctly, and once again, I could be mistaken, but I believe that's what that trial was going to be about, like wiping out every supernatural creature in existence type of situation, all the bad things, maybe. But, so, I mean, and obviously because where things are present day, we know that's super not the case with, we super know that that's not the case, that monsters kept going, so obviously Sam never found a means of wiping out all the monsters and stuff like that, you know? I mean, obviously right now they're dealing mainly with the Akrita, but regardless, I'm going on a huge tangent. We also have Carlos and Lata visiting and ended up, they're investigating Brock and end up running into Jericho, someone that him and Carlos were a duo. And obviously Carlos is enjoying the fun reminder, but Jericho's like, hey, like, stop by the show, and he was reluctant to, because it is that thing that, just like Mary, Carlos, it is that, and Dean has that voiceover about, like, yeah, the sacrifices that you have to make. You have to kind of choose between, and Carlos says it's choose between the dream or killing the monsters, and he chose killing the monsters. And so there's always going to be a part of him thinking about what his life could have been, the music, the glitz, the glamour. Even he's like, yeah, that probably would have went to my head. It's like, yeah, but Jericho been joking, like, you already kind of have a very inflated ego regardless. So, but then Carlos ended up bumping into him. I was like, it's Gabriel, you sneaky bastard, you. I was all about it. I was like, hell yeah. I was like, wow. I was like, that's going to be so interesting, because it's like, and especially later on, they're like, oh, we're dealing with a demigod. It's like, okay, so you're not just dealing with a trickster, you're dealing with Loki. But then I'm also like, you're not really, I mean, technically you are dealing with Loki, because he just pretended to be Loki. You're actually dealing, because of course you wouldn't know about it at this time. But it's like, yeah, he's an archangel, so. But essentially, they do, sadly, another victim ends up happening. It's like the bartender catches on fire, and there's no putting the fire out, because once it consumes them and basically leaves nothing but ash in its way. And it turns out Jericho kind of, I think it's playing into that story, the crossroads story of just like, right, is that specifically just I'm trying to think of what that story is actually called. Oh, I'm trying to think of it. I thought there was a very specific titling to it, but I guess it is just Crossroads. I mean, I guess that's where the Crossroad Demons thing come from. But like, right, making a deal with the devil where you sell your soul to become a pretty good musician. That's where I was like, that's why I was surprised. Like, oh, so that ends up being the story they're telling, but they're using Loki instead of just like a demon. Because I'm like, well, I would assume Crossroad Demons exist. Obviously, like Crowley ended up being like the most prevalent one that you got to know personally by name and stuff. But yeah, I thought that was I don't know why I said Crowley. Either way, so I thought that was kind of interesting, and that's what Jericho's mixed up in. But then it turns out, I guess that's the way that happened is because him and Gabriel slept together. I don't know, because he was like, oh, like he's like, because he didn't tell you. He's like, oh, I guess that's why the OG kind of group kind of ended up breaking up together, because I guess like personal feelings got in the way. It's kind of implying like Jericho and there was something between Jericho and Carlos. I think it might have been what he was kind of implying. Maybe maybe I completely misinterpreted that scene. But I love that it's like, yeah, you're gonna have to kind of take his place now. So it's like, all right, you're a fan of like modern dance or something like that. He's like, useless. You're a hunter. You're this. You're a hair model. Samesies. So I love it. It's like, oh, you're such a dick, but I love his episodes. Like, his episodes are always like some of my favorite, especially when like Sam and Dean were stuck in like TV shows and commercials. Like, I love that episode so much. Oh, it's so good and so meta because he's such a fourth wall breaking dick. But yeah, like he ends up dragging Carlos in this, and it's like, and snaps Jericho. He's like, what'd you do with him? It doesn't matter. He's like a oh god, what was the word? What was the phrasing he used? He was like, what was he saying? Like, oh, he was like a safety deposit or something like that. He's just like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Let's focus on you. So now the team's trying to come up with a way to obviously deal with this, and I love that Carlos is like, right, when I thought my final meal would be me, kind of, what was he like on the boat with my lover or something like that. It's like, no, but here I am, in this regard. But yeah, they all put their blood on a knife, which I was like, interesting, because we know that Sam and Dean went about killing a trickster. Oh, well, because this was, well, I had to think about that, because when they originally dealt with Gabriel in Supernatural, they thought he was a trickster. In this regard, they went about thinking of him as Loki. So I'm sure that, because I was about to say, because it was like a very specific, wasn't it like a very specific like wooden stake or something they had to shove through his heart? Obviously, it didn't kill him because he's not a trickster. But I think that was the case with, yeah, but like I said, that might be why, because I was like, why, that's interesting that they had to go like about a reflective blade, because that also has to deal with like his mirror and stuff like that. But I was like, maybe it's just because it's like, right, he's playing the role of a trickster, he's also playing the role of Loki, so that's why you think these weaknesses would affect him, which they kind of do, but we'll get to that soon enough. So I guess that's my justification why the method they went about dealing with him was different. Like, none of it was going to work either way, but still. So I love that he's like, oh, I was hoping you bring an audience and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, let's even the odds. And he ends up making multiples of himself. It's also like, yeah, he's a trickster douchebag. So it's like, yeah, none of these copies are real, but they're real enough to kind of do some damage to you. I was like, please tell me Sam actually did stab the right one. I was like, okay, good. I thought that was, I mean, you never know with a trickster, right? But it's like, he's like, yeah, I know it wasn't you, Mary, because I know enough about my daughter. I also know Loki used the wrong hand. Like, he didn't use her dominant hand. So I was like, yeah, figured it out. But it's like, he's like, oh, that was such a beautiful, touching father-daughter moment, and pulls the knife out. It's like, you're supposed to be dead. She's like, you kind of got the translation a little. The translation's actually a little more complex than you think. You're not as smart. You're not as smart as a cookie, which is saying a lot because a cookie isn't smart, And so he puts Carlos in that position where it's like, all right, now you got to you got to sing. And I thought he was lining them up because he's like, cool, now choose a victim, but no, specifically because of the poeticness of it. He's got, yeah, you got to kill Jericho. It's like, go ahead. And I love, he's like, oh yeah, I love the building tension and stuff like that. And then it's like Carlos smashes the guitar, and then like almost like basically the victory confetti shoots up. And I was like, at first I was like, wait, has this whole thing been a ploy? I was like, I mean, I know he likes screwing with people, but I was like, is that what this was all about? But even he was like, no, humanity's always supposed to take this selfish route, but you taking the selfish route? No, I'm not going to lose. And he ended up losing and got sucked into the mirror, which I'm like, okay. So I'm like, either you were trapped in that mirror for God knows how long, but eventually something happens and you're able to get out, because we know you're out and about, or is that more of your trickery where you're just like, oh no, you caught me. Oh, well, time to move on. Let me leave a version of myself here for you to think that I'm still trapped here, when in actuality I'm kind of off on my... Because I was expecting when they stabbed him, he was going to be like, oh my God, and pretended to be dead just to kind of mirror when Sam and Dean first encounter him. They thought they killed him, but at the end of the episode, it's like, nope, I'm still alive. So I thought it was going to be something like that. But it still could be what I said, where he could be faking, or maybe he legitimately is trapped in that mirror. He's handling it a lot better than I thought he would. But I was like, would that... I mean, I'm sure, like, that would still be enough to trap even in... But once again, he's an archangel, too, so I'm like, the rules are wonky around that, so I wouldn't think something like that... Because, yeah, that's for trapping Loki. But then I start thinking, like, is that what Loki actually looks like? And then Gabriel just took his... But it's like, because we know the other gods were like, oh, they know him as Loki. I couldn't remember if they knew he was Gabriel or not. I know all the other gods got, like, slaughtered. And, but yeah, because I don't think they knew that he was an angel, if I remember correctly. They still did believe he was Loki, so... Because that's how he presented himself, like, all these years when he was away from Dad, and all his other siblings. So... Yeah, I'm so curious to see what they do with that. I'm so glad that's introduced, that they could always pull that string at any point in time they want to, but it just makes its episodes, I mean, obviously it's jacked up, but also it's like, it's him doing his thing. It's always going to be jacked up and a little funny. It's just, oh, dude, I was like, that's so dope. But when it's all said and done, what was also interesting too, they brought it up that they're looking for the Queen's burial site, which I was like, oh. I was like, wait, so where is the Queen of the Akrita? So they're looking for a burial site. Like, are they trying to find her actual body? Like, maybe only a fraction, like maybe it's that type of thing of like, oh, only a fraction of her is inside somebody right now. Once again, my money still is on Mary's mom, which, notice, she did not come up in conversation this episode. I'm sorry, which I find that so interesting. But I was like, isn't that, I actually kind of lost my train of thought of where I was going to go with that. But my point was, like, I brought that up and I was like, that's been my running theory, that they were like, right, the Queen had to be I mean, that was kind of their assumption, but I was like, it's not Roxy, but I was like, I was assuming, my thought process for the past couple episodes have been like, it's got to be in her mom, because she hasn't been in contact with her mom for such a long time, and I think with everything going on, she never bothered bringing it up to her dad because they have so much to worry about. But either way, he's going off with Ada to find a means to deal with the Queen. Right. I think I picked up the point I was making. Right, like I said, there's a piece of the Queen in somebody else, and they're trying to put her back in her original body, or is someone else playing the role of the Queen when the real Queen is buried and dead somewhere? There's so many questions on that front that I'm not sure. But like I said, the whole the Queen being buried somewhere thing was kind of interesting. It's like, well, we still don't know the end result of why finding her is so important. Like, are they going to sacrifice all their lives to resurrect her, and her being fully restored is what leads to everything? I thought they were looking specifically for a door, but it seems like they're specifically looking for where she's buried. I guess, like, maybe the last time she was in this world, someone buried her or something like that. Maybe she herself is the portal to kind of open up and allow the other Akrita in. I don't know how that whole situation works, and neither does Sam, which I love that it's like, Mr. Campbell's like, oh, you can call me Samuel. Thanks, Sam. Samuel. Either way. But I also do like that, Well, first and foremost, Carlos and Jericho. It's like, right, you might not be able to play music anymore, but you can still find kind of playing more. I think a manager or kind of like producer role kind of can be what he can, because it's like, yes, you can't make up from the past, which I think Carlos knows that firsthand. But what you can do is you can still do good. You can still put good out there in the world. That could be your way to contribute to all of this. So he 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 ends up. Carlos ends up playing with the band, which I love. What was it? Lots of being like, play Black Sabbath, and they're all looking at her like, what are you doing? She's like, sorry, I'm more of a metal girl than kind of like this folksy type of sound. But yeah, Carlos went on stage and obviously killed it, and they're all kind of like, wow, because it's like, right, that's Rivers Gemini for you. So that was beautiful, but also Mary and John like just kind of came out of nowhere and kissed him. It's like, oh, what? But she's like, right, I don't want to think about the creator or like, if the world's going to have a future or not. She's like, I want to be with you, and that's all I want to focus on right now. But the moment gets killed when they're looking at photos and they're like, wait, who is that? I was like, oh my God, is it going to be Chuck? I was like, please tell me it's going to be like Chuck or something. It's going to be somebody we recognize. And like, who is that guy? And why is he in the back of your father's photo? And it's Dean. I was like, whoa. I was like, but then again, let's not forget, Dean did time travel and meet a younger version of his mom and dad. Was it Castiel specifically? Because I remember it was an angel that let him do that. It was a very specific form of time travel. Obviously, it's a time thing that didn't exist. So, like, this circumstance is different, which I'm like, okay, so we're in Krypton territory here. So, the reason why I'm saying that, like, obviously Krypton kind of got labeled as like, oh yeah, it's a prequel series. It's like, even like the actor who plays Selig would be like, it's not a prequel. Like, if he could get people to know anything, because the show is like, it has prequel elements to it, but it is a time travel story of like someone coming back trying to make sure Superman was never born, and someone else trying to be like, yo, I'm trying to correct history to make sure that Superman is born because he becomes the greatest hero of the universe. So that's kind of like, that's where I'm like, oh, so was it other means in which Dean time travel? I don't think this is that same point, because remember that point, I want to say in that history, like, John died when Sam, like, not unless we're doing like splintering alternate timeline type of thing in that regard, but I'm like, I think like the moment Dean returned to present day, like all that history got undone. It was kind of like now it's undone. I want to say it was Cassio that kind of made that happen, but I don't remember now. It was just like this is obviously years and years ago storyline. So the fact is that obviously they would do that, but I was like, yo, I think that's kind of a nice twist, making it like, yo, Dean's the one that they found, which, very poetic. Obviously, at some point, he's going to interact with his parents, which is going to be, obviously, very Back to the Future-esque. I mean, once again, he already did it regardless, but still. So, I'm so interested to see how that came about, what that plot point is going to be about, especially what's going to be interesting, too. I mean, they're not going to connect the dots because that would kind of screw up the supernatural timeline history, but it's like, yo, oh, you called a trick? Yeah, we dealt with Loki. It's like, wait, what? Check that mirror. He's going, and it's like, damn. It's like, why? How'd you know he was going to be going? Don't worry about it. It's like, oh, that, now I know how we have to deal with that back. It's like, but this is back in his younger days when he was still a douchebag and not the self-sacrificing person he ultimately died being, So, like I said, I'm thinking too much about it. But either way, that's kind of beside the point. I'm so interested to see where the hell the next episode takes us with that. Will that be an immediate thing, or will that be something we tackle in a couple episodes? That's definitely going to be interesting to see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.